And a very happy Monday to you at 12:07 in the West. It's the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang's in Culver City.
John, over the weekend at the last minute, Oakland Unified avoided a strike with their teachers union, authorizing all kinds of pay raises.
Money. Get that money.
And then immediately announcing a whole bunch of layoffs.
And I want you to be all the way pissed off.
Wait a minute. You're saying something in Oakland's a complete mess?
I am saying that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How do you feel about that, Shangy?
That's right. I like that. That was amazing.
We'll have more details on that later on in the program. But first, over the weekend, the United States and Israel launched a major military attack on Iran, Operation Epic Fury. The strikes hit many targets, including Iran's nuclear sites, missile bases, navy, and top leaders. The most shocking part of the attack is that Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khomeini, was killed in one of the attacks, along with dozens of other high-ranking officials. Apparently, they were all meeting over breakfast, and that's when the missiles started flying. Talk about a Grand Slam breakfast. Iran fought back quickly. It fired missiles and drones at Israel and U.S. military bases in nearby countries like Iraq, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. Some missiles hit Israeli cities, killing at least 10 people there. Explosions were reported in several places, and air defenses shot down many incoming weapons. The U.S. lost at least 3 soldiers fighting in this attack. Hundreds of people have died overall in Iran from the strikes as well. President Trump said the operation is ongoing and could last weeks. He warned Iran not to have nuclear weapons and said the U.S. will keep going until that threat is gone. This has caused big worries about a wider war in the Middle East, higher oil prices, canceled flights, protests around the world, including celebrations right here on the streets in Los Angeles, where Persian Americans took to the streets with American flags, with Israeli flags, with Iran flags, and celebrated the death of a dictator, the death of Khomeini. It also has bigger implications beyond just the United States and the Middle East. China, of course, is a very close ally, along with Russia, to Iran, and they are dependent on Iran's oil to keep their countries going. Now, with Iran in turmoil, that is obviously in flux. Joining us to talk about all of this is an expert on China and the author of Plan Red, China's project to destroy America, as well as the coming collapse of China and the great U.S.-China tech war. You can get him online at GordonChang.com and follow him on X at Gordon G. Chang. Gordon Chang, welcome.
Thank you so much, John.
What do you make of what happened over the weekend in Iran?
There are many storylines, but one of them is that China is not a superpower. China talks big beforehand, but when it comes to it, it is not able to stop a determined America. And we saw this same pattern in the beginning of January when the United States extracted Nicolas Maduro and his wife. China, again, talked big, but didn't do anything. The other thing is that President Trump is basically using Xi Jinping's strategy against the United States. Trump is using it against China. You know, Xi Jinping is a Maoist. He believes in the Maoist tactics of encircling the cities from the countryside. Now, that's what Xi Jinping has been doing to the U.S. In other words, getting allies and friends around the world to make the world a lot more difficult for the U.S. Well, Trump has been doing the same thing to China, and we see this in Venezuela, Cuba, Iran, and other places. And it's been extraordinarily successful for our president. Bravo to him.
I read somewhere that another ally of Iran, Russia, was one of the first phone calls that happened after the bombing started. The Iranians called the Russians and asked for help. And the Russians said, "We're sorry this is happening to you. Best of luck. Click." And that was essentially all they got from the Russians. If you are another country right now and you're looking at the globe and you say to yourself, I can be on the side of the United States and Europe, or I can be on the side of Russia and China, and you see how they treated a friend when they were in need in Venezuela, how they treated a friend in need in Iran, it's real easy to decide who's got your back and who doesn't.
Absolutely. And it's the United States, which is, I believe, the world's sole superpower. We are the only country in the world that can determine our own fate. And John, that's not to say that the United States will always prevail. But when we fail, it's because we have chosen to fail. China is extraordinarily dependent on the United States. Russia right now is helpless. It's fighting a battle in Ukraine, which it's holding on, but it's there, and it's not able to make the gains that everybody thought it would. So you're dealing with two very large states, authoritarian Russia and totalitarian China, and they're not that powerful. They look a lot smaller than they did at the beginning of this year.
Do you believe that prior to this weekend in Iran and prior to Venezuela, the Russian and Chinese intelligence agencies believed that we had the capabilities of doing things like this? Or do you think they were caught completely flat-footed?
I believe that they knew that the United States could do this. The question is whether the Chinese thought whether we would or not. Now, Chinese propaganda before February 28th, the first day of attacks on Iran, was saying that the United States wouldn't dare to do this. And I wasn't sure whether they actually believed it or whether they were just trying to create a narrative. But in any event, now Chinese propagandists are really getting mauled inside China because they were propagating that line, and everybody knows it was false. They were saying, after the first half hour, Iran would beat the crap out of the United States and Israel. Well, that did not happen.
No, it didn't. And of course, the looming threat in that part of the world is what China will do with Taiwan. Will China eventually invade Taiwan, which could toss the global economy into complete chaos? And I would say, from my point of view, after this weekend and after Venezuela, they're less likely to invade Taiwan than they were, let's say, last year.
Yes, and that's for a number of reasons. One of them is that the Chinese military at the top is in disarray because of all of Xi Jinping's purges. Right now, on the Communist Party's Central Military Commission, which controls the military, there's only 2 of 7 members. And neither of those two, Xi Jinping, who's not a military officer, and a political commissar, none of them have operational experience, and they're not war fighters. And that means that the Chinese military right now is not capable. That's not to say China won't stumble into a war. It could easily stumble into a war, but it is not capable of launching a war on a hard target such as the main island of Taiwan. They just don't have the capability at this moment.
What is China's backup plan if Venezuelan, and I should say cheap Venezuelan and Iranian oil, is not available to them the way it used to be?
Really good question. China has a strategic petroleum reserve, 900 million barrels or something like that. Plus, also, China is going to buy more oil from Russia. So that's the backup plan. But it's going to be difficult for China because the oil that they will buy will not be as cheap as the Venezuelan oil and the Iranian oil. Venezuela and Iran supplied something like 17-18% last year of China's seaborne oil, and it was at very heavily discounted rates. China is not going to get cheap oil anymore.
What do you think China's other allies, specifically those in the Western Hemisphere, are thinking today, like Cuba, for example, one of the outliers in our part of the world that is buddies with China? Right now, when they look to their south and they see what happened in Venezuela and they look around the globe and they see what happened in Iran, I would be very nervous right now if I was the Cuban Communist government.
And you would be desperate because with the cutoff of Venezuelan oil, there is a severe shortage of energy in Cuba. But we don't have to speculate about what China's friends in Latin America think because, for instance, Gustavo Petro, the anti-American, pro-China president of Colombia, has now become very pro-American, pro-Trump. And that occurred right after the January 3 raid on Venezuela. So, as Osama bin Laden famously said, when people see 2 horses, they always go for the strong horse. And that was your point earlier in your comments. And we're seeing that now across the world.
A lot of people, I think, feared that this morning the international trade markets would take a torpedo the way that Tehran did. And that didn't happen. The markets are not hemorrhaging and it's not in free fall the way a lot of people were suspecting that it would. Do you think that this gave investors more confidence in global stability after the strike happened?
I wish I could answer that question. I think that, we clearly see what happened today, and the worst did not happen. I think things will sort of right themselves for a number of reasons. Part of them is that, China is not that important to the world, and we're seeing how weak it actually is. And that contributes to a sense of confidence. But there are other reasons why I think the global markets will be able to stabilize, because in general, they're far more stable than we give them credit for. And I think they'll weather this. But that is, that remains to be seen, because the question is, are we going to see a wider war? And we could very well see one, because we now have, and people are not paying attention to this, but Pakistan has accelerated and intensified its war on the Afghan Taliban. And we could see other conflicts breaking out again. And so this is a point where we just have to be very careful as what happens around the rest of the world.
Could you see the opposite taking place too, where, let's say, Putin says to himself, okay, I know I'm sleeping in a safe house at night, and I know that my Russian military exists to protect me and the Russian people, but if they can do this in two countries that were regarded as being two countries that invest heavily in their military and certainly weren't a weak sister who was ripe for the pickings, then I could be next. Maybe it's time to wind down the war in Ukraine and see if we can come to a resolution and get out while the getting's good.
Yeah, I don't see Putin winding down the war in Ukraine for a number of reasons, but I do see your larger point, which is absolutely correct, and that is we will see peace breaking out around the world. And that's because people are going to look at American power, the way that President Trump wielded it, and this is going to be a very good wave. In history, we have seen when the bad actors, they get together and they're effective, world gets worse. But also we have seen peace break out when the democratic states have been able to exert their will. And I believe we're going to go through, if not in the next few weeks, when there could be turmoil in the markets. But I think in the intermediate term, we are going to see a peaceful world, a prosperous world, and we're going to see a much better place because President Trump is dealing with all the messes that his predecessors have left him. Trump gets a lot of credit, whether he's successful or not. He gets a lot of credit for tackling issues that his predecessors just kicked down the road and made worse because as dangers gathered, they didn't do anything. Trump is doing something.
Let's talk about another outlier, and that would be North Korea. If you're sitting in South Korea today, I think you're sitting a little more confident than you used to sit, knowing that the Americans have the power to do something like this if a bad actor gets out of line.
Yeah, that's a great question. The South Korean government, which basically has a view very different from the South Korean people. South Korean government is pro-Beijing, pro-North Korea, deeply anti-U.S. That doesn't represent the South Korean people who have become increasingly pro-U.S. over the years. But we've got a real problem in South Korea. So Lee Jae-myung, the president of South Korea, he is probably looking at dismay at how successful the U.S. is because he really loves China. He really loves North Korea. And the people that surround him in his government are basically communists. So this is a very serious situation for us. And it's possible that South Korea could become the world's next Venezuela. But we have to watch this very, very closely.
We've seen domestic political ramifications to large-scale international events happen before, where, let's say, when the Democratic Party and Harry Truman helped create the State of Israel, Jewish voters have been very, very loyal to the Democratic Party for decades, ever that happened. We know that the Vietnamese community in the United States, extremely anti-communist. They certainly warmed up to people like Ronald Reagan, and they elected Bob Dornan to represent them in Congress, a fierce anti-communist. When I saw the images, not just here in Los Angeles, but around the country and around the globe, of Persian people, Iranian people, taking to the streets with the American flag, with the Israeli flag, with the Iranian flag. You saw the tears of joy streaming down their faces, knowing that the Ayatollah is gone and that the people of Iran have an opportunity to take their country back. Do you think within that community, and here in California, it's a large community, you could see that same level of swing that we've seen before with other groups when a large-scale event like this resonates so much within that population?
Oh, absolutely. I think that we're going to have the Iranian community in the U.S. vote Republican for a long time. But I also think other communities will as well, because I do believe that President Trump's foreign policies will be successful. And I think people will see that he has the right idea about what's going on in the world. And I do believe that that will affect voting patterns in other ethnic groups.
Last question before you go. The president just gave his State of the Union address last week. I think there were two lines in that speech regarding Iran. He didn't spend a lot of time on it. If he knew he was going to bomb Iran before he gave that speech, he certainly didn't show his hand of cards. How would you grade President Trump on how well he kept this close to his vest?
Certainly the Pentagon kept a secret. And this is, I think, that they learned from the signal incident earlier. So we now have a Pentagon and we have a White House that are not leaking. And this is really unusual because, regardless of the president, reporters have been able to get the best of prior administrations. So they've learned their lesson, and that's really important.
Gordon Chang, expert on China and author of Plan Red, China's project to destroy America, as well as the coming collapse of China and the great U.S.-China tech war. You can get them at GordonChang.com, Amazon.com, and follow Gordon on X at Gordon G. Chang. Gordon, thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, well, thank you so much, John. I really appreciate it.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, if you end up in Fresno next weekend, you can listen to us.
Because we do a special version of the Fix California Hour that airs on Saturdays at noon on the big KMJ in Fresno. So if 15 hours of this isn't enough for you and you've already downloaded all the podcasts by searching for The John Phillips Show and you look us up on YouTube, you can also get the Fix California Hour replay Saturdays at noon on 580 on the AM dial, 105.9 FM, and KMJnow.com. It's the Fix California Hour replay Saturdays at noon on KMJ.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. Hey, Randy, what do you say we make a couple of listeners very happy?
Well, let's do that right now. 790 KABC welcomes Kenny Wayne Shepherd at the Canyon at the Oxnard Performing Arts Center on June 21st. Tickets are on sale now at AXS.com, but right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-790-5222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. Tickets furnished by The Canyon, where music meets the soul. Good luck dialing.
Of late, Oakland Unified School District has seen more drama than the Real Housewives of fill in the blank. And Randy, they're kicking it into high gear.
Well, we have seen a lot going on with Oakland Unified, including them finally getting out of receivership, which they've been in for, I believe, 20 years, to only immediately be under the threat of receivership once again, because this school district, like many school districts in the California area, are broke. They are having a massive decline in enrollment at the same time that all of the unions want more money. Well, a strike was imminent, but a deal was made, so there will be no strike in Oakland. But that being said, in order to pay for the raises, layoffs are happening immediately, which has their teachers union.
And I want you to be all the way pissed off.
Some of these schools have to have math departments.
You would think so, but math can be a little fuzzy when the answer is, oh, just ask the state for more money.
Well, Gavin's not going to be there in the long term, and you don't know who's going to replace him quite yet.
For more on the situation going on at OUSD, here is KPIX in the Bay.
Well, there will be no teacher strike in Oakland and no school disruption. Teachers and the Oakland Unified School District, they reached a deal after marathon negotiations. So that's the good news. But while that crisis has been averted, the school district now has to deal with a $100 million budget gap, and it has just approved eliminating more than 400 positions. Lynn.
Got to pay for those raises somehow.
And when push comes to shove, the teachers union looks out for the teachers, and the classified personnel and the administrators and everyone else can watch their own backs.
Well, and this was going to happen no matter what. They were going to give the teachers union what they want. We know what happens. So going through the motions of a strike, there was just no point to it. You're just going to do exactly what San Francisco Unified did after a week of striking, give them into their demands, and immediately announce you're broke and have to go for layoffs.
It's a kabuki theater of sorts.
Lynn has more on this potential impact.
A big relief that a strike has been averted, but there's also a sense of sadness. The district will have to lay off hundreds of teachers to pay for the raises and balance the budget.
They're going straight after the teachers, not even the classified staff.
That usually isn't what happens.
Castlemont High here is one of the schools expected to get hit hard by the layoffs.
He's one of the best teachers here. I couldn't imagine a different teacher in that classroom teaching, so it would really suck if he left.
Castlemont High students worry about how layoffs will affect their school and education.
It sucks because, there's a lot of good teachers here.
Sophomore Yuri McClatty says the underserved Castlemont High in East Oakland needs more resources, not less.
Oh, it's going to be getting a lot less.
There are fewer students than there used to be.
And this district for years and years and years has kicked the can down the road when they have been told you have to be closing schools and merging schools. Nobody likes that, but if you have a declining enrollment that's not going to turn around anytime soon, if you're serving 30% fewer students, that means you need 30% fewer schools.
That mentality never works.
Not less.
These past couple years, Castlemont, the resources, it's gotten a lot worse, so I'm praying it gets better.
Test scores and district data show Castlemont is one of the lowest performing schools in Oakland. And based on its
let's keep throwing money at that one.
Oh, yeah, because that'll solve the problem.
And based on its attendance record, district officials believe the school could see some of the worst layoffs. The school board voted this week
because none of the kids who are enrolled even show up to that school.
Well, during COVID, they were told they didn't have to.
Yep, this is all lingering effects from that. Part of the decline in enrollment for the public schools is people leaving the state, and part of it is parents not trusting the state anymore with the public schools because of the lockdowns.
Well, they also, they devalued their own product. That's when they showed their hand, and they said, you know what, it's really not that important. You can teach yourself just as well on the computer. You don't need us. Let us stay at home and be in our pajamas and work from our dens. Well, once you tell them that, guess what? The motivation to come back isn't going to be there for a lot of people.
The school board voted this week to lay off 421 educators for the upcoming school year. Another 144 positions will have their hours reduced.
I was pink slipped a few years ago, and it was like, and I'd been in the district for a while when it happened, so I was not expecting it. It's very hard. I mean, you don't know, should I look for another job? Should I stay? It's very unsettling.
Jennifer Brohart is the president of the school board and a longtime Oakland teacher. She says they have no choice. They must cut $100 million to balance the budget. Otherwise, the district could go bankrupt and return to state receivership.
The need for districts.
They've been out of receivership for 6 months, and they're already going back.
Welcome back.
Otherwise, the district could go bankrupt and return to state receivership.
The need for districts and unions to come together and get more money from the state. I think it's also an issue of state funding.
The state is spending more money on schools than they've ever spent before. So how is it that every district is broke?
Well, and this is also where you would think, okay, the school board and the teachers unions, they aren't on the same page. When in reality they are. because both of them want Gavin to give them a blank check. That's what both of them want. Because if Gavin gives them the blank check, they can continue to behave like this in perpetuity. If Gavin doesn't give them the blank check, that's when the district would be forced to cut even further. And then you really want to see that relationship between the teachers and the district go south. Just wait till that happens.
And unions to come together and get more money from the state. I think it's also an issue of state funding.
Because of Prop 98, the state brought in more money this year than expected, and that money has to go because of Prop 98 to the schools. The schools are getting even more money, but where does any of that money actually go?
And there's no such thing as an unlimited supply of money. It's a zero-sum game here. Because they can't get their house in order, they can't balance their own budget. What they want to do is they want to take resources out of Fullerton, and they want to take it out of Anaheim, and they want to take it out of the San Fernando Valley, and they want to take it out of the Central Valley, and they want to send it to Oakland because Oakland refuses to reform itself.
Both the teachers union and the district say they're glad they reached a tentative agreement on Friday morning to prevent a strike. Educators say the new deal would give senior teachers a 13% pay raise over 2 years, while younger educators would see an 11% increase.
A kind of a community win for trying to create the stability that we know that our students really deserve.
The union president is disappointed with the upcoming layoffs, calling...
Well, where did you think the money was going to come from for the raises?
And by the way, I don't mean to cut anyone down for asking for a raise. All of us believe that our work is important. But if you have fewer customers, and the customers that you do have are scoring awful on the test, so you're not being successful in any sort of metric that we can measure, why is it that you deserve a raise, especially when you're broke?
Because it's expensive to live in Oakland.
I see.
They're not based on, you never hear anyone saying that these raises are based on performance.
No, because you can't make that argument.
The union president is disappointed with the upcoming layoffs, calling them unnecessary.
We have over 400 educators that leave the district every year, so it actually just doesn't make sense mathematically.
Back at Castlemont, students wonder what will happen to some of their favorite teachers.
It's tough for us in the future, and it hurts. You know, it really hurts to see teachers that's been here for years and months, you know, it really hurts to see them get cut.
Yori believes they'll overcome, doing more with less.
You know, I've had a couple people say it to my face, you know, this school is trash, but it's not.
Who told them that? The teachers?
You know, I've had a couple people say it to my face, you know, this school is trash, but it's not. It's a great school.
Teachers will vote in the next couple of weeks on whether they'll accept the new deal. Around the same time, the district will send out those layoff notices by March 15th.
So there's the latest from KPIX's Dahlin. The teacher strike has been avoided in Oakland, but in order to pay for the raises, lots of layoffs, including layoffs of teachers, are happening.
Well, if you're in Oakland and you want to be hanging with Mr. Cooper, you better get TV land. 800-222-5222 is a telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
John writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Gas prices up, school districts broke, fire departments incapable of doing their job. I have just opened a vein and I am bleeding out.
Let's go to Craig in Los Gatos. Craig, hello.
Hey, John. You know, I'm an ex-teacher, and we were always short of money. And then I was watching Channel 7 KGO ABC here in the Bay Area. They did a special report on ghost students. These were kids they found that were enrolled in community colleges that were taking lots of money. And they didn't exist. And they went into the colleges. They talked to some lecturers. They go, yeah, we're not aware of who's in our class or who isn't. And then I was looking at the SNAP numbers, how we're getting just ripped off. I guess Newsom got a letter concerning how many the numbers have been, you know, their PIN numbers have been, you know, stolen. And even the GAO said how much money is going at. This is all money that would have been in the general fund, and we as teachers wouldn't have to be scrambling quite as much. But it's called fraud, and every time I contact my representative, they will not discuss it. They won't return emails when you mention the ghost students or the SNAP numbers. It is just amazing how they don't want to deal with the real problem.
You are 100% correct in everything that you just said. And I do not understand for the life of me why the unions aren't more offended at all of the waste, fraud, and abuse that's going on in this state. Because if the money was spent properly, then guess what? We would end up with a lot more than what we use right now. And that money could go to things like public safety. It could go to things like fixing our infrastructure. It could go to the schools. It could go to upgrade our technology so we get ripped off less often than we normally do. But it just doesn't seem like there's an appetite to do that. Whenever someone brings it up, they go, oh, well, you're targeting the Armenian community. That's racist. And it's like, no, we don't want anyone ripping off taxpayers in California because that money ultimately comes out of our pockets.
I know. It's just maddening, though, that the representatives won't even return emails about accountability. And this is all of our Democratic Senate that we have, and Assembly, actually, here in California. And you can't get through to them. They won't admit anything except let's get rid of Jarvis and take some more money from the property owners.
Well, part of the reason is because so much of that fraud is going to politically connected nonprofits. And those people are the peers of the members of the Assembly and the members of the Senate. When these people term out, a lot of them go into that world, and a lot of them come from that world before they go into elected office. So if you actually did get rid of the waste, fraud, and abuse, you would also derail the gravy train.
You're right. Thanks, John. No, at least they know about it. It was KGO Channel 7 that was able to actually report this fraud. So you can't make any of this stuff up.
And we did the story here, Craig. The ghost students thing is rampant. It was like 1/3 of all applicants to community colleges were fake AI chatbots.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, thanks for dealing with it, John.
All right. Thank you for the call. I appreciate it. Let's go to Cardi in Lancaster. Cardi, hello.
Hey, fellas. How you doing?
Good.
So, the president of the Oakland Teachers Association, how great it is. We're getting the strike averted and all this, and we're getting monies and all this. Hey, John and Randy, why don't they worry about teaching the kids arithmetic, reading, writing, comprehension, maybe some real history, and bring back industrial arts if you want these kids to be successful? Not every kid or young man wants to twirl a baton. My 2 cents.
All right. Thank you for the call, sir. Let's go to Dan in Linwood. Dan, hello.
Hi, and that guy hit it on the money too. This isn't it's not a revenue problem. It is a spending problem, and I hope if you get one of these public employee clowns or politicians on, that you ask them, why does every single school district in California empty its budget at the end of the year? They spend it on, I just went to an auction this weekend. They spend it on anything you can think of to empty it so they can ask for more the next year and cry broke. It doesn't matter if they have $5 million or $50 million in their budget. They do it. If they're going to spend the money, at least give it to the teachers. But this goes for hard goods like PA equipment, audio, computers, restaurant stuff for the cafeterias. And I just went there. It was brand new stuff that just gets cycled through. They spend it like crazy. Stop voting for school bonds, folks. They waste it. I've got 35 years in this business dealing with the school districts.
It's amazing how every time there's a bond that's on the ballot, or they wanted the state lottery, or whatever it is that they want in that moment, they say, this is what will save public education. This is what will give California students the greatest advantage of any student in the country. and then the public passes it, and then they act like yesterday doesn't exist, and they move on to the next one, and they just rinse and repeat. It's the same thing that they said the last time.
Bond repayment is 10 times the amount of the bond. That's what's even worse. Who would buy something with a credit card and pay 10 times the amount back? That's what these school bonds and all these public utility bonds, all this other stuff, it is, look it up. It's almost 10 times, sometimes 11 times the amount of the bond. So $100 million bond, $1 billion payoff. And we can't keep spending like this. This is insane.
Thank you for the call, sir. I appreciate it, and you're right. Let's go to Eric in Vacaville. Eric, hello.
Hello. Yeah, I retired 2 years ago. 40-year employee. With your last caller, the waste was the maintenance, and we would just throw perfectly good building material away, only to reorder it days afterwards. And, I was a union member for 40 years, and I believe it's just everybody's in on it. It's a vicious circle, It's just sad. I know that there's going to be cuts because when our guy that's the head of our financial, when he comes down and talks to us and says, "Oh, we're looking pretty good," well, that's just telling you that there's going to be cuts, layoffs. So I don't believe anything anybody says at the top, and it's sad for us, the taxpayer. I just hope, no administrator is listening to this call because I have family that work for the district. So anyway, have a good day.
All right. Thank you for the call, sir. I appreciate it. And I think a lot of our problems, whether it comes to public safety, infrastructure, the schools, would be solved if we got rid of the waste, fraud, and abuse, and we spent the money the way that taxpayers assume the money is being spent and not given to the politically connected non-for-profits, which are certainly having a heyday in California right now.